Greetings and welcome to episode 59 of the Sustaining the Herd podcast brought to you by Agri-Services and Engineering of Raymond, Nebraska. I'm your host, Andrew Wadle. I'm joined in the studio, as usual, with my co-host, Brock Vitek.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Brock. And we're also joined in the studio today with our very special guest, Steve Tippery of Realm 5.
Good to be here. Thanks for the invite.
And great to have you here, Steve. And we'll give you a chance just to tell everybody about Realm 5 and you and Realm 5 here in a moment. But before we do that, we're just going to welcome all of our guests. And great to have you all back with us. And we really appreciate the input and feedback we get from you on the episodes. We really appreciate our return listeners. And welcome to our new listeners. And thank you for finding the herd. And just a little bit about sustaining the herd before we get going. When it comes to sustainability, usually sustainability is put into three buckets, or at least that's what we think of it as here at Agri-Services and Engineering. And the first is maybe the more traditional bucket, and that is protecting air and water, protecting the air that we breathe and the water that we drink. Everybody wants clean air and water, and we, as engineers and ag professionals, we want to do everything we can to keep pollutants out of the air and the water. So that's pretty basic sustainability. The second part about sustainability is doing more with less, resource efficiency. How can we get more units of output for per unit of input? And then the third part of sustainability is strong businesses. We have to have strong agribusinesses in order to continue to as American agriculture does, and that is feed and clothe and power the world. And really our best episodes are the episodes where we really can cut through all of those three facets of sustainability. And I have every reason to believe that our guest today, Steve Tippery with Realm 5, will be able to do that. And so with that, Steve, tell us about you and tell us about Realm 5.
Well, I guess first of all, I'm a Nebraska farm boy. So I grew up in northeast Nebraska on a diversified crop operation. So corn, soybeans, and hogs, and a little bit of cattle. And I guess I was also a farmer. Before I went to college, I raised hogs. And so I was actually the largest swine operation in the United States as my senior year of high school in FFA. So not that means anything because the numbers were really small, but it was a big operation for that time. So, but yeah, I had a chance to go to the University of Nebraska and did engineering school there, graduated, and I had a pretty cool career doing new product development for combines for a couple different manufacturers, traveled the world, did a lot of field testing and various things across a lot of different crop conditions. And then in 2015, had a chance to start my own company here in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I guess we're kind of trying to solve some of the problems that we saw for a long time that the big companies weren't working to solve. So that's kind of a little bit the story. And anyway, we're based in North Lincoln in Nebraska.
And one other interesting thing that I've come to learn about Steve that it's just important to know, and I like to talk about it whenever I can, and that is Steve is an ag engineer, back in the quote-unquote old days when we called it ag engineering. And so we're kind of alike in that regard.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to go back to the university and tour the Nebraska Tractor Test Lab and some of the places. I got a chance to work there in college, and honestly, that was good experience, especially as I worked for Caterpillar and Kloss and AGCO. There were some good roots there.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's really funny. I'm having a bit of a flashback to undergraduate days. And again, I'm thinking about old school ag engineering when we would do as part of power machinery class, we would do combine performance testing where you'd go out and there was an ASAE standard and you count kernels and whatnot, and you count this many kernels here and it means grain's getting by this. If you count this, it's something's happening here, and you're probably quite familiar with that.
Oh yeah, I remember especially. I was working for Kloss at the time, and I was based in Omaha. And my boss comes in my office one day. He's like, "Hey, would you mind going up to Canada and helping the guys do some field testing? I'm like, sure, yeah, no problem. So I get in the car and, I take like a week's worth of clothes or something with me. And, like 2 months later, I come home.
Wow.
So, that was back before I was married and before I had kids. So it was okay. But, when you're young and you're able to do all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Great. So, Steve, you mentioned you started Realm 5 in 2015, and you started to get into a little of it, talking about trying to solve some problems the industry is facing. Could you dive a bit deeper for us on just how did Realm 5 come to be? What was the genesis of, what's turned into Realm 5 as it exists today?
Yeah. Well, I think I remember a specific meeting. So I'd already started the company, but I was in Lincoln, and I was actually part of the Nebraska LEAD program. I was at a LEAD event, and I ran into this guy that I didn't know real well, but he was just insistent. I needed to meet his somebody that he knew that he was working for, and it happened to be he was the one that actually kind of connected me to my co-founder Brant Berkey, and he was just insistent because he was their farm CFO, and he's like, you got to meet Brant. You guys think the same. And so I had a chance to meet him, and he had kind of complementary background experience, and the reason I bring that up is because we both kind of were annoyed a little bit by just all of these data silos, and things don't talk to this, and the data's over here, and nobody wants to share it, and these people are protecting it, these people don't want to share it, etc. And we just kind of thought, that's something we can kind of help with. And so I think this kind of long-term objective of helping our customers not only access data at the source, but also, get it connected and get it interoperable, and then be able to make decisions based upon that data, has kind of led to all of the things that we do today. Because, now we're a fairly vertically integrated company. We build devices that capture data all the way down to the circuit board level. We design our circuit boards. We do, all the firmware, all the software, all the wireless capabilities. And now we're in the high voltage electronics and, turning on high horsepower fans and things like that. But that doesn't happen if you don't have kind of this vision of where you're trying to go. So I think, now it's kind of progressed where we actually can automate most of the things that our customers care about. And now it matters like which ones have return on investment and where should they start. And I think that's kind of the fun part is, any problem can be solved, but not all problems are financially, worth it. And we're really trying to help our customers understand which problems make sense to solve because they can make money solving those problems, and then others maybe not so important right now.
Can you put in a perspective or just give an example of these data silos that were existing that you have since integrated?
Yeah, I mean, probably several things pop into my mind, but one of them, we had one of a Nebraska co-op had come to us, and they had a lot of sites with grain bins and silos and various things on them. And one of the problems that they wanted help with is, hey, can you help us to manage our grain better across all of our sites and across all of our large structures? And so we, over the course of a period of time, we built the technology that could help them not just see what's going on, but help them centrally manage all of their grain, and then be able to automate their aeration system so they turn on and off at the right time to save energy and minimize shrink and make sure that people are using the system that they bought, and just really help them drive standard operating procedures across their company. And so, in this particular case, this company had very established SOPs. So it's not like they didn't know what they wanted. They knew what they wanted, but not a single one of their sites was doing it that way. And they had no idea because there was no way to check up on, how things were being managed. And so I think we've managed to do that now across quite a few areas in the ag market. And we just kind of keep expanding into more because all of our customers are really struggling with labor, and there's some things that people should do, and then there's other things that people shouldn't have to do anymore. And we're really trying to help with the things that people either shouldn't have to do anymore, are unsafe, or maybe repetitive and consistency is a problem, etc. And there's just a lot of crappy jobs in ag if you think about it.
It's crappy, dangerous jobs.
Yep.
Absolutely.
They're oftentimes they're related.
They sometimes are. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like a lot of our customers, they climb grain bins. Why? Well, they have to see what's in there. Well, really? Do you need to climb grain bins to do that? Because as soon as you get up there and you write this thing down on a tablet or a piece of paper, I mean, it's going to be out of date tomorrow. And so, are you making the right decisions based upon that? Probably not. And so, as soon as they get that data showing up in a dashboard that allows them to kind of see what they have across all of their sites, it just the paybacks are just so quick.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So Steve, that's a great example talking about how you worked with a co-op to, just really connect their grain operations. I know Realm 5 works with a lot of different sectors or industries within ag and maybe even outside of ag. I'm not sure. Can you just give us a taste of like the different markets you guys work in?
Yeah, I think that the grain one is a more recent. We've probably only been in that market for 4 or so years. We do work in ethanol. We do work in, when we first started the company, we were actually in the soil moisture and weather business. We still do that. We still have some good customers and dealers in that space. So nothing's really like gone away, but a lot of our focus has kind of expanded into the large agribusinesses that, they have multi-site problems. And I think when you have one site, you can kind of keep an eye on what's going on. But if you have sites across multiple different areas, it's just really hard to keep track of things. And I think that's kind of where our Smart Sites platform really helps because, the data flows automatically and they can kind of make better decisions. Like one thing that comes to mind, especially in the livestock business, there's lagoons everywhere, right? You're keeping effluent or something. Well, there's rules on that, and I think we're not pushing that, but there's things like that people just don't manage very well because it's out of sight, out of mind, and it's just hard to keep a logbook on things that are really boring, like going and measuring lagoon levels. Well, we can access that data remotely. It just flows into Smart Sites. Nobody has to remember to do anything. It just shows up, and then you can just export it in a certain way, and there's your compliance records. You can just do a lot of these things really fast and easy. It doesn't have to be difficult, and especially if you're an operation where you're paying somebody to do that work, are they really doing it? Are they doing it right? And are you protecting yourself? In the case something bad happens. And I think that's where these tools, some of them on the compliance and the regulation side of things, it's a different kind of payback, right? You're trying to kind of protect yourself in some respects.
Risk management.
It's a little bit of risk management. In other cases, like it's really easy math. Like, hey, I could get you a 6-month payback on this investment, So they all have slightly different paybacks and mechanisms for getting your money back. But I think that's really important to us is that just because something can be done doesn't mean people should do it if it doesn't have a financial payback.
Right. Just curious, and because this is a space that we're in quite constantly, and that is lagoon levels, say, right? So everybody's got staff gauges, and it takes somebody to go out and measure, lay eyes on the staff gauge, and it usually has weeds or tumbleweeds or something hanging off it, and it's not necessarily the easiest thing or the most accurate. I look at this as one of those. Is this a problem? Is this a problem worth solving from the standpoint that can something like that be done? Monitoring of a lagoon, say, be done at a cost that makes it attractive to someone?
I think it comes down to the ROI assumptions. That's one. I think the thing we've kind of found, especially in the livestock market, is people don't pay for convenience. So it has to save labor. It has to save time. It has to allow somebody to do something different. It has to avoid a cost. And I think there's always, like for different types of operations, those numbers might be slightly different. What we found is we've been very successful in that space, especially on like processing sites and paper mills and various things like that. But the product was actually developed for livestock lagoons. So it's just kind of interesting how, where the product sales end up going, even if it was designed for a certain purpose.
Sure. Steve, you mentioned your Smart Sites platform as you were giving some examples, and something I actually wanted to ask about. I was doing some homework prior to sitting down with you here today, and was on the Realm 5 website and was looking at a page about smart sites, and it seems like it's really please correct me here. I know I'm not going to speak correctly on it probably, but just like a platform to just aggregate and gain some insights from all the data that your Realm 5 devices are collecting. Is that right? Just could you walk us through smart sites?
Yeah, so I kind of like to describe it as like, think of technology Legos. So you can put these Legos together in all sorts of different combinations and across different types of applications. So, maybe you're talking about scales. We help to automate the scale house. Well, there's scales in feedlot applications. There's scales in grain, operations. There's scales in processing sites. But there are some uniquenesses on one versus the other. So there might have to be a little bit different technology Lego, but it's roughly doing the same thing. And so we offer over 100 different of these, I'll call them technology Legos. One might be a grain system. One might be pile monitoring for feed. One might be automating the grain grading process, but they all kind of bolt together into the same software platform. And so depending on the problem that we're really trying to solve for the customer, they have one login, they can export their data, they can API their data to third-party systems. They own their data. They don't have to worry about us doing something bad with it. And so like people talk about data portability, and our system, that's really what it's built for, is, hey, it's their data, they should get to move it around as they see fit. And also we ingest data from all sorts of things. So we can also integrate with other third-party systems if they want to see more of their data in smart sites.
And so of the services that you offer, can you give an example of something that, say, specifically services animal ag? Do you do anything in that area?
Yeah, so one of the things we're doing a lot of is what we call Rapid. So Rapid it's a remote pile inventory detection system. And so we mount technology in feed bays, and that allows the feed company to make sure that the feed doesn't run out. So they can see what's going on remotely. We're able to not only scan it, but turn it into, alerts. Hey, it looks like you're getting low. Would you like me to order something? And, what happens is everybody's really busy, and maybe that somebody changes the feed ration. Well, nobody bothered to tell the feed company or whoever's delivering feed. And then they start to run out on, it's Friday at 5 and somebody's like, oh crap, I got to get feed over the weekend. And now it becomes a rush delivery. And so we're trying to avoid those types of things. And, the whole business runs better if there's not surprises. Costs go down. Like, surprises mean somebody's spending money on something extra, right? And so I think we're trying to do that across a lot of things, is try to reduce the surprises and just create more consistency.
Yeah. Where do you think the technology is going when it comes to the facial recognition and the pattern recognition? I think it's out there, it's developing, but is that somewhere you guys see you're getting yourselves into?
Yeah, so one of our new products is it's a relatively new product for us, is our automated grain grading system. So the problem we're solving there is, farmers deliver grain to the local elevator or the ethanol plant or wherever they're taking their grain. And, somebody has always had to physically grade the grain. So they bring it in, they put it through a moisture tester, they smell the grain, they look at it for foreign material, and they got it, some of it's subjective, some of it's objective data, right? But in the end, it still requires people. Well, it's not that people are bad or anything, but most of our customers are just having a really hard time finding people that want to do that job anymore. It's a repetitive job. You're doing the same thing every day. It's just boring. And so a lot of people aren't wanting to do that work anymore. And so they've asked it, hey, can you help us with that? And so we're using a number of pieces of technology there, but one of them is taking pictures. As the grain's flowing through, we take lots of pictures. We use AI to, turn those pictures into, like, how much broken do I have, how much foreign material, all of those types of things, and do that very quickly. And then not only can we grade it objectively and consistently every time, but we're also grading a lot larger sample because we can. You know, usually it's like, hey, I got 6 trucks backed up. I got to get them through. I'm going to do a cursory look on this, and I don't want to have to dock that guy, so I'm just going to let him go through or whatever. And I'm not suggesting we're in the business of docking, because that's not what we do. But at least then it's like, hey, if you have bad grain, you're going to get docked. If you have good grain, you're not going to get docked. And we just make it simple and easy. And I think it makes it a lot more fair for everybody. And so we're using pretty cool technology to just create fairness.
Yeah, that just seems like one of those tasks that's just ripe for automation from the standpoint of the fact that you do take some of the subjectivity out of it when there's a machine doing it, as opposed to the guy who's in a hurry and has other things on his mind. And
well, it's not a lot of the market, but everybody, like, you start getting into it and everybody has stories of, well, this person treats this person this way, but that person doesn't like this person. And do you really think that doesn't affect their payments? I'm telling you, it sometimes does, right?
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, thousands of dollars could be saved in a matter of a minute, right? I mean,
again,
the ROI is
like,
to the moon there.
You deliver this, you should get paid for this. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good example. And my question was going a little bit of a different direction from the standpoint of pattern recognition. Are you doing anything, or do you see any future of actually with animals, looking at faces, looking at snotty noses, eyes, temperature, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes. But our experience has just been difficult in the animal space. I'll bring it up to the. I'll bring it up in terms of just back to convenience. You have to have extremely provable return on investment before anybody spends any money in the animal space. Honestly, we brought several cool products to market and have had very little success in the animal space. And it's hard. I don't know. I don't have it all figured out, to be honest, but we have not found the magic button to get people to spend money.
That's interesting.
In the animal space.
It is. Yeah. No, that's an interesting observation, that folks don't like just paying for convenience, or just for convenience in animal agriculture. I think I agree with that. It's they want to see an ROI.
Well, everybody wants to see an ROI, but you can show an ROI to an animal person and it goes in one ear and out the other. In my experience, I'm not saying that this is like everybody has this. I can use that same kind of logic in other areas, and it results in, business. So I don't know. I'm an animal guy at heart. I mean, I grew up on a farm. I've raised pigs, so I'm putting myself in that category. Would I pay for that? And I think I would, but I don't know. It's been a hard market for us, to be honest.
Yeah, sure. No, that's a really interesting observation. Steve, just as every example you've given, everything you've talked about as it relates to the services and products that Realm 5 offers, over and over again, I'm just hearing sustainability. And I think Andrew would probably agree with me insofar as, what your services and products are really helping your clients to not only save money, but probably be more resource efficient, doing more with less. Better for the environment as well, automating some more things, making unsafe or undesirable jobs automated, so maybe people enjoy their work more and it's safer for them. I'm hearing you hit on all the things that Andrew talks about in his introduction with these different buckets of sustainability.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of inefficiency in ag. And one example that pops to mind, we helped a different co-op install monitoring systems on all of their anhydrous assets. So, they had a lot of sites, a lot of tanks all over the place. And, what actually happens during the heat of the season is everybody needs anhydrous. Like the tanks are never big enough, so they're just hauling out of them and delivering to them as quick as possible, okay? But what actually happens is nobody knows how much is where. And so they just drive around the countryside like, oh, tank's full. I guess I got to go to the next site. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, we're still doing that stuff. And I'm
Yeah.
answering like 100%. Like our industry is wasting diesel fuel like crazy, just driving around looking for stuff, things that you shouldn't even have to get into a pickup for. And these are big rigs, right? These are 18 wheelers that are driving around searching for tanks to fill up. And so one of the weird success stories is, okay, so we deployed this at this company, and the guy that had never gone on vacation ever, he'd been there 20 some years. He'd never been able to go on vacation during fertilizer season because it's like the 10 days of hell. And like it's just everybody on deck because it's busy, right? And everybody's working 20-hour days and stuff. Well, he leaves and goes on vacation during this time. Why? Because he could. So now what he did, which was completely unintended, we started noticing all of these strange logins to the platform. And we're like, well, what the heck? Like, what's going on here? Well, he had given his login to all these truck drivers. Well, at first we were like, why did he do that? Well, of course, they're then able to go directly to the tank that needs to get filled up, fill it up, and go get another load. And like, of course, that's what you would want to do, right? But they never could do that before. So they were filling up the tanks like twice as fast because they weren't driving around looking for tanks to fill up. And this is kind of a silly example, but it just shows how the industry actually works, right? It's lots of extra miles, people driving around looking for things. And like one example, we brought a monitoring system for stock tank water. And it's a pretty cool system, and it would prevent that in the let's say the ranching industry, for example. People wouldn't have to drive around looking at tanks every day. That was like the most unsuccessful product we've ever launched, and why? I have no idea.
People don't want to pay for convenience, perhaps.
I guess so.
Interesting.
Well, what I really, really like about the things that you're talking about is the way I would describe the problems that you're solving is that they're common sense problems. They're just common sense problems, or common sense problems. They're common sense issues. Why show up and deliver anhydrous when the tank's going to be full? Or why is the guy excited when you're not there and it's empty? Right?
Well, a different example, we have a solution for measuring like how much is in feed bins. And I'd like to say it's not true, but I cannot believe in 2026 that people run out of feed so often. Right? I mean, it's a silly problem, but and that affects average daily gain and all of those things. But I mean, some of these problems should just not exist anymore.
Yeah. So as we kind of start to wind down here a little bit, I'm maybe going to start maybe where maybe we started in that, and talking about Realm 5, and from what I've learned about Realm 5 is Realm 5 really the 5. Maybe you tell us what the 5 is, and then I'll ask my question. How's that? Because I think it's really cool.
So Realm 5, the name for our company actually does mean something, and so we're working in the 5th disruption in agriculture is why we named our company that. So the data and automation space is really our core area of expertise and things that we do, and that's we call that the 5th disruption. And so everything that is really moving the needle is in that space right now, in our opinion.
But if you would, because I think you capture it really, really well, step through those disruptions, because I think it is the history of production agriculture. Yeah.
So the first one was hybridization of seed. That was kind of like the big change back in the day, and then we had the industrialization, so movement to tractors, for from the horse to the tractor, and then one of them was GMO and precision farming more recently, and then now we're in this 5th realm, if you will, this data and automation space. And so each of those areas have had like a major implication on the industry and have moved us forward, made us more efficient. If you remember back in the homesteading days, people were, one horse or 2 horses and a plow, and they could maybe manage 80 acres or something, with a man and a wife or kids or whatever. And obviously we can farm a lot more than that with one person now. And so, it's going to keep getting like that. But, the next big phase is, we haven't seen anything yet, right? There's a lot more coming. I being in the combine business, we always talked about the day when the machines were going to stop getting bigger and they were going to be way smaller. They're going to be more transportable. They were going to be all talking together and they wouldn't have a cab on them. But it's because the technology was not just possible, but it was affordable, and I think that's still going to happen, but it hasn't gotten there yet. I was just in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and you can get in a car that doesn't have a driver, and you're on your phone, you just tell it where it needs to go, and it comes and picks you up and it takes you there. And this is on city streets with pedestrians and stuff, and we haven't gotten there in ag yet. And it honestly, I really thought, being an ag engineer, that we would have started in ag and it would have been like way down the road before we got to the streets. That's not where we're at right now, and it's really surprising to me.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Andrew.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, Steve, as you mentioned, instead of one combine, maybe you have, 5 or 10 smaller ones, cabless, running through a field like in swarm mode, right?
Swarms. It's combine swarms.
I think we've started to see that with spray drones, actually. It just the tip of the iceberg. We've started to see a little of that.
The technology's there.
But it hasn't,
drones especially.
It hasn't really, we haven't reached a critical mass on it yet. But
the way I like to say, my dad and I used to talk about this. You talk about like McDonald's or something. Well, why are people in the back? Well, it's because they're cheap. Well, okay, great. Now McDonald's is launching some of their restaurants, and they don't have people in the back, right? It's not that it's not possible to solve. It's just the economics have to drive the adoption. And once the people get more expensive, then there won't be people back there anymore. There will be a different way to do it. And I think, I was just talking with a European guy actually last week, and it just brings that up as an example. And he was kind of a little bit complaining about the U.S. and how slow we are to adopt solar and different things like that. And I was like, I have to remind you, it's not a money problem. Like, we have more, capital than about any other place in the world by a lot, right?
Yeah.
What it is it's not cost effective yet. Once it is cost effective and it makes sense financially, like the adoption, it'll be just a flood, and we'll have more solar than everywhere else in the world, like instantly.
Yeah.
And I think some people outside the U.S. don't quite understand that about us. We're very good at business, very good at financial things, and like, if you want change, you just need to make the economics work, and then it will just happen. You don't need a lot of regulation. You just need the economics to work. And I think that's the thing about ag. We're really good at figuring that stuff out really quickly. Like, once things pay for themselves, people adopt it really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it only has to make sense.
I'm going to say even that mundane job of reading the staff gauge, at someday it will be financially attractive to adopt a technology to do that.
Yeah, I think so. The difference is when nobody's there and you have to do the thing, that might be the only choice. And in some of these jobs, some jobs are really easy. Like, everybody loves driving the combine, and I have to believe that's why it's going to be a while before cabs off of the combines, because people really like that job. As opposed to the tractor that goes back and forth in the field just day in, day out. Like, that's the job that needs to be automated first.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Steve, this has been absolutely fantastic. Really enjoyed it, and I am very excited and eager to see what the sixth realm will bring someday, because I have every reason to believe that we're on the precipice of that, and I, regardless of the name of your company, I'm sure you will be following that or working to make it better.
Always innovating.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. Well, Steve, this really has been an honor and a pleasure to have you as our guest. I think I speak for both Andrew and myself. I say thank you for being on, and I'm confident our listeners have been able to gain a lot of knowledge and insight and some thought-provoking information here today. So thanks for being on Sustaining the Herd. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for the offer.
And to all of our listeners, both new and returning, thank you for choosing to spend some time today with Andrew, Steve, and I. It's been fun to put this episode together, and hope you all have been able to get something from it. And we look forward to being back with you again, as always, in a couple of weeks. Until then, thanks for joining the herd today.